What's up, all you beautiful hive scum, and welcome to another Astromax video. This one, we're going to be talking about the stratagems in the Genestealer Cult Codex. We're going to go through every single one of them. We're going to talk about what we like, what we don't like, how they're going to be useful, how to budget for your CP, how to plan out your CP spends, and get the most out of your stratagems. This book, Codex Genestealer Cults for Warhammer 40,000, provides a really interesting and unique way to look at stratagems, so we're going to talk about that too. So prime your explosives, summon the cult, overload your fuel cells, and get ready because the Day of Ascension starts right now. Thank you everyone who participated in the poll to decide to do stratagems first. I was conflicted. I didn't know if it'd be more useful to do data sheets and then look at the stratagems, having a better idea for the data sheets, or do stratagems and have a better idea of what you can do with the different data sheets when we cover data sheets next week. So I just threw it out to you guys. Thank you everyone who participated in that. I will probably do more like community posts and stuff on the YouTube page to try and keep you guys informed of what's going on. I will also continue to put updates and utilize the Instagram page, Astromax Media. I'll put the link down in the description. More right now, it's difficult to have, say, like, hey, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're going to have episodes coming out because the filming, the editing, all that stuff kind of just gets worked around my normal work schedule. Wow, sentence structure kind of trapped me there. Let's see, other updates. I mentioned in the last video of some possible tournaments coming up. I can say with 100% certainty I will be attending the Alamo, remember the Alamo GT in San Antonio, Texas. That's coming up on May 5th and 6th. So I will 100% be there, and that means in April we will be looking at doing some battle reports, not like full turn 5-round battle reports, but what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to do some list crafting towards the end of March, and then in April we're going to kind of do, maybe turn by turn phase, a couple of phases of some of the stratagems, the plays, the strategies, not stratagems, strategies and plays that I want to try and use with the new army. That said, I'm kind of in between GSC armies right now. I sold off a bunch of a huge chunk of my cult that was a holdover from 8th edition. It was in a different paint scheme. It was a paint scheme. I didn't paint these models, and it was like, I don't know, 50 acolytes, some neophytes, and a couple of Goliath rock trucks. Back in 8th edition, it was encouraged to take multiple cults, right, in each detachment. So I had a couple of different paint schemes. So I sold off the ones I didn't paint, reprimed the ones that I had painted to streamline everything down into one cult. And so there's a slight chance that I won't have everything. Well, okay, nothing is going to be 100% painted while we're doing the demo videos, but there's a real good chance that I'll have everything painted before the deadline for the Alamo GT. If for whatever reason I don't, the submission deadline for lists is April 29th, and if we hit that day and I don't have my cult ready, or realistically like, hey, one more week I'll be ready to go, I'm just going to submit my Thousand Sons list. So I apologize in advance for the GSC players that maybe I won't get to rep the cult for that GT. There's another one at the end of May in Oklahoma City I want to go to. That one, 100%, I will have my new GSC. We're going to do Hive Cult. I will have them ready to go. It's going to be a lot of Necromunda bashed stuff. So if we don't get it for the Alamo, we'll have it for that one. Moving on, we're going to do stratagems today. Proficient planning probably on Monday, so you should be seeing this on Thursday. Monday, proficient planning will come out. Thursday of next week, we'll start looking at data sheets. We are going to do a meta watch at some point, but we're so close to a new balanced data slate coming out that I think it just makes sense to just do that episode with that new information. If for some reason we get through data sheets and we still have a little time before that comes out, we'll maybe talk about what I expect to see in that data slate. All right, so as we go through these stratagems, there's a couple things you're going to want to keep in mind, especially if you're a new player. The way I advise most people to start learning stratagems and really start maximizing their playing skill with Warhammer is I use a lot of football metaphors. Go Bears. In football, the first couple of series that your team owns the ball, all of your plays are scripted, right? So your coaches have sat down and they figured out, okay, we're going to run this play, followed by this play, followed by this thing. We're going to do this, then this, then this, and that should give us this result. Warhammer's really no different. You're going to want to start with 3, but ultimately you're going to have maybe like 6 plays that you're going to use every single game. And you're probably going to use them turns 1, 2, and 3, because like by 4 and 5, so much, in my experience, so much of your army is dead. So much of your opponent's army has been destroyed that it's kind of hard to say, oh, in the last turn, I'm going to have this left in my back pocket, and I'll be able to do this and this, because, dice are dice, and sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But certainly you should have at least 1 play for turn 1, 1 play for turn 2, and 1 play for turn 3. As you get more reps with your army and you get more experience, it'll probably be something like 2 plays on turn 1, 3 plays on turn 2, 2 plays on turn 3, or whatever turn you think is going to be your big push to really kind of crush your opponent and win the game. That's probably going to be a 3 play. Some of that is going to use stratagems. Some of it is going to use warlord traits, and a big chunk of this book is propped up by crossfire and exposed. So what a lot of armies have to use stratagems to get, which is essentially +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and ignore cover. A lot of that's covered in other army stratagems. In Genestealer Cults, you can get so much mileage out of stratagems and another huge chunk of mileage out of your proficient planning. And lastly, you can really customize your cult creed. So between those 3 things, your cult creed, your stratagems, and your proficient planning, you can, with practice, sort of mitigate the need for stratagems. But as we go through this, we're going to call out like, hey, this is something that I use. Like, I build a play around this. Hey, this is something that's so situational, just forget it's here. Hey, this is useful, keep it in your back pocket. So that's kind of how we're going to break this down. First up, we have Bore Through. This is a 1 CP. Use this stratagem in the fight phase when a Genestealer Cults unit from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack with an industrial weapon against an enemy monster or vehicle unit, you can re-roll the wound roll. So +1 to wound from exposed, or something that gives you exposed, because that shows up a lot in this book too. And reroll to wound against monster and vehicle units is pretty clutch for this army. There's not a lot of access to wound rerolls, especially full wound rerolls. The Primus gives you reroll wound rolls of 1 on like 1 unit, maybe 2 with a proficient planning upgrade. So having this should be in your 5 back pocket stratagems. Next up, we have Rapid Advance. Use this stratagem in your movement phase when a Genestealer Cults Biker, or Genestealer Cults vehicle unit from your army advances. Do not make an advance roll. Instead, until the end of the phase, add 6 inches to the move characteristic of models in that unit. This is a budgeted, this is a play. You can build plays around this, especially if you're running something like Rusted Claw. So plan right here, you're going to use this every single turn. So you're going to need 5 CP over the course of the game for rapid advance. Up next, we have One with the Shadows. Use this stratagem in your opponent's shooting phase when a Genestealer Cults infantry unit from your army is selected as the target of an attack. Until the end of the phase, each time a ranged attack is allocated to a model in that unit, while it is receiving the benefits of cover, add an additional 1 to any armor saving throws made against that attack. I generally think that, again, I don't try and make my cults any more survivable than they already aren't. I like to use all of my CP and design all of my plays around maximizing lethality. But if you are in a situation where you really can't afford to lose a unit and it's being shot at, this can be handy. Up next, we have Dig Them Out. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a Genestealer Cult unit from your army is selected to shoot until the end of the phase. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack with an industrial weapon that targets a unit within 12 inches of it, the target is treated as being exposed for that attack. Yes, you will use this. You will use this a lot. This next one, too, is the absolute bee's knees of this book. I think it's one of the main reasons this book has any competitive viability to it. Overload fuel cells. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a Genestealer Cults unit from your army is selected to shoot, or in the fight phase when a Genestealer Cults unit from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time an industrial weapon is selected for a model in that unit to attack with, that model can overload it. If it does so, then until the shooting phase or fight phase is resolved, each time a model in that unit makes an attack with that weapon. If it's a ranged weapon, add +1 to the damage characteristic. If it's a melee weapon, +1 strength. After you've resolved all of your attacks, if any unmodified hit rolls were rolled with any of those weapons, after the attacking model's unit has finished making attacks, its unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So it's not like plasma where the guy who's firing the seismic cannon rolls a 1, he dies. In a squad of 20 neophytes, it's like, oh, I rolled 3 1s with some seismic cannons, 3 random neos with shotguns are going to go down. Excellent on all of your shooting. Excellent. Again, you're probably going to use this every single turn. If you aren't using this, if for some reason you have a unit, like if for some reason there is nothing you could put this on for a turn, the game has probably gone real sideways for you. Up next, we have Monstrous Vigor. I'm not going to read this whole paragraph. This is transhuman for aberrants and abominants, meaning that on wound rolls of 1, 2, and 3, nothing happens. So they ignore wound rolls of 1, 2, or 3. It is 1 CP if a unit has 5 or fewer models, 2 CP if you have 6 or more models in a unit. It's only aberrants or abominants. Not the worst thing in the world. If you're running an aberrant heavy list, you're going to want this. Up next, we have Raking Fire. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when an Adeline or Achilles Ridge Runner unit from your army is selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, if the target has a crossfire marker and was exposed when it was selected as the target, you can re-roll the hit roll. Note that the unit must be exposed as specified on page 89. I mean, it's not the hardest thing in the world to get exposed. True exposed is pretty easy if you've built your list for it. So things like Kellamorph, Reductus Saboteur with the Oppressor's Bane is a great, pop up. Get your exposed. Jackal Alphas is also another, with her speed, is another one that you can get some exposed with pretty easily. I like this mostly for the Ridge Runners. The Ridge Runners don't have core, so there's not a lot of ways to enhance their shooting in this codex. This is a good one, especially if you're using them as your platforms for your heavy mining lasers, which isn't the loadout I would recommend, but if you are going that route, being able to make them a little less swingy by being able to reroll their hit rolls is pretty good. And if you're going, wide on the Ridge Runners with the heavy mining lasers, you want to put together some plays to be able to pull off exposed so that you can use this. Mass Firearms is up next. Use the stratagem in your shooting phase when a Genestealer Cults crossfire unit from your army that contains 6 or more models is selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, if all models in that unit target one enemy unit that has a crossfire marker, an unmodified hit roll of 6 automatically wounds the target. This is clutch and definitely something you should put a play together for. My shotguns are going to go way up in value because they're going to be auto wounding. My strength 6 seismic cannons are going to be auto wounding on 6s. And then we couple that with Hive Cult for exploding 6s, and now we have something really fun that we're cooking with. Devoted Crew is up next. Use the stratagem in your command phase. Select one Genestealer Cults vehicle model with your army until the start of your next command phase. That model is considered to have its full wounds remaining for the purposes of determining what the characteristics on its profile to use. Cool. If you're running a lot of Goliaths, keep this in mind. Hypermetabolism, use the stratagem. In your command phase, select one Genestealer Cults character model from your army. That model regains up to D3 lost wounds. Between unquestioning loyalty and the fact that your characters are really squishy, I have yet to find a lot of use for hypermetabolism. All right, up next we have Rigged to Blow. Again, if you're doing a lot of Goliath rock grinders or trucks, just stick this one in your back pocket anytime they're destroyed. If they're carrying a demolition cache, they just blow up. And all of your Goliath rock grinders and all of your Goliath trucks should be carrying caches of demo charges because they're free now. Even when they were 5 points, it was still worth it. All right, up next, data parasites. This one's quite lengthy. We'll read through it. It's 1 CP or 2 CP. Use the stratagem in your movement phase. Select one enemy vehicle model within 18 inches and visible to a Clamavus model from your army. If that enemy vehicle model's characteristics can change as it suffers damage, roll 1d6. On 3+ until the start of your next command phase, that enemy vehicle model is considered to have half the number of wounds remaining for the purposes of determining what those characteristics are. If that enemy vehicle model has the Titanic keyword, this stratagem costs 2 CP, otherwise 1 CP. So this should be more handy than it is, but the fact that you need a Clamavus and then you have to make a dice roll for it kind of makes it meh. Even if you have a Clamavus in your army, this is something I wouldn't recommend using this. 2 CP up next, we have Legendary Demise. 2 CP. Use this stratagem in any phase when a killer morph model from your army is destroyed by an enemy model. Do not remove that killer morph model from play. It can, after the attacking model's unit has finished making its attacks, shoot as if it were the shooting phase, and then it dies. So you get a free round of shooting with your killer morph. Love it. It's not like a build around. You certainly don't want to run out and plan on your Kelermorph getting killed, but he probably is going to die at some point in the game. Handy thing to have, and it's very satisfying because of all the things that a Kelermorph can do. He's kind of a nuisance to any opponent, so it's very satisfying when your opponent finally gets all the shots and death required upon him to just fire up to 12, depending on your weapon loadout, 12 more times before you pull him off the board, just to stick it to him one more time. Very fun to have. Definitely something to keep in mind. Gestalt Consciousness. Use this stratagem in your psychic phase when a cult psyker model from your army manifests a blessing psychic power that instructs you to select a friendly unit. When selecting a unit to be affected by that psychic power, you can select one friendly cult unit anywhere on the battlefield. That unit does not have to be visible to or within any specified range of that psyker model. One of my favorite stratagems in this entire book. It's a big reason why I always find it valuable to bring at least a Magus along with me, because you can just plant that Magus at the back of the battlefield and every turn just throw out a blessing onto a unit for 1 CP. Super handy to have. Okay, Reckless Demolitions. I love this stratagem, and it's definitely something you can build a play around. Use the stratagem in the fight phase when a Genestealer Cult unit from your army is selected to fight. Select one model equipped with a grenade weapon in that unit until the end of the phase. That model can only attack with that grenade weapon, even though it is not a melee weapon, and even if it has the blast special rule, and can do so even if it is within engagement range of an enemy unit. So basically, if you're in close combat with an enemy unit, you can hit them with a grenade. You're going to use the weapon profile type as the number of attacks. So if it's a grenade D6, you're going to roll a D6. That's the number of attacks you get. Each time a model makes an attack with this weapon, an unmodified hit roll of 2+ is always successful. And on an unmodified hit roll of 1, after the model's unit has finished making its attack, one model in that unit is destroyed. Okay, we have, up next, we have the requisition stratagems. So we have Leaders of the Cult, which we talked about when we were doing Warlord traits. If your Warlord is a Patriarch, for 1 CP, you can get 2 more Warlord traits for characters in HQ battlefield roles. Genestealer gifts, that is going to be for your extra relics. So if your Warlord is a Genestealer Cults keyword, then 1 CP you can give a relic to something else, another character. Has to be something that could already have a relic. Can't double up your relics. And, depending on what size game you're playing, you can use this 1, 2, or 3 times. Moving right along, Pack Hunters for 2 CP. Use the stratagem in your shooting phase. Select one enemy unit within 6 inches and visible to a Cult Adelan Jackals unit from your army until the end of the phase. Each time a model in a friendly cult unit makes a ranged attack against that enemy unit, treat that enemy unit as being exposed for that attack. Awesome. Your army should have Jackals in it, and you should always be wanting +1 to wound. So this 2 CP, everything in your army can shoot whatever is within 6 inches of these Jackals and get +1 to wound. Definitely something you want to build a movement. You want to build around this for at least part of one turn. Whatever turn is going to be your major push. You want to get your jackals up next to something. You want to throw this off, right? So you between the jackals giving you this sort of 2 CP exposed, plus something like a Nexus or a Sanctus automatically giving you a crossfire. Now everything else in your army that shoots at the thing you really want dead is going to get +1 to wound and +1 to hit. Up next, we have Genetic Lineage. It's 1 CP. Use the stratagem in your charge phase. Select one Acolyte Hybrid or Hybrid Metamorph unit from your army. Until the end of the turn, that unit is eligible to charge in a turn in which it advanced. This still has some value in Arcs of Omen. When this codex first came out, it was like, oh my god, this is going to be like all the time. But as 9th edition has gone on, it's become pretty apparent that Genestealer Cults are a shooting army and not a melee army. Tooled up squads of acolytes with, 4 special weapons is still a dangerous thing. And being able to advance them and charge them is about the only way to make melee work in Genestealer Cults anymore. I believe that in Arcs of Omen and where we're at right now, deep striking has never been less useful for Genestealer Cults than it has ever been. It's too risky. If you come up to charge something out of a deep strike and you whiff on your charge, which is still an 8, you will be obliterated the following turn, and you will have just lost X number of points for no reason. Moving on, Meticulous Uprising. Use this stratagem when you would reveal your ambush markers. If you are playing a combat patrol or incursion battle, you can remove 1 of your ambush markers. If you are playing a strike force or onslaught battle, you can remove up to 2 of your ambush markers. For each ambush marker removed, set them up again anywhere on the battlefield that is wholly within your deployment zone and more than 9 inches away from any enemy models. Once you have done so, reveal all of your ambush markers as normal. It is handy to have. It's just kind of a way to fix your deployment. If you've like, oh, I put too many markers on this side versus this side. We have Clandestine Goals. It's 1 CP. Use this stratagem after selecting secondary objectives or agendas. Choose one of your selections. Do not reveal that selection to your opponent for the first time you score victory points or experience points for that selection, reveal it to your opponent. Note that you must still make a record of your selection. We recommend writing down blah, 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 blah. It's a change your secondary and keep it a secret. The Genestealer Cult secondaries have gotten better and better and better. And right now, where we're at on the eve of a new balanced data slate, the Genestealer Cult secondaries are so good that I could absolutely never see taking this because, okay, I shouldn't say never, only Sith deal in absolutes. But looking at the Arcs of Omen mission pack and playing a couple of missions in Arcs of Omen now, how you don't just run ambush, brood swarm, and banners and score 42 to 45 points on your secondaries every single game, I don't know. Up next, we have Booby Trap. Use this stratagem at the end of your turn. Select one objective marker you control that has a reductive saboteur or a Genestealer Cult core unit from your army within range of it. The next time an enemy unit ends any kind of movement within range of that objective marker, roll 1d6, 2 to 4, suffers d3 mortal wounds, 5, suffers 3 mortal wounds. You can only do this per objective marker 1 time. This is fun. This is thematic. It's a fun way to like mess around with your saboteur, but like realistically, so situational. Next, we have Lurk in Shadows. This one's a 2 CP. Use the stratagem at the start of your opponent's shooting phase. Select one Genestealer Cults infantry unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, each time an enemy model shoots, if that unit is not the closest eligible target or within 12 inches of that enemy model, then until the shooting is resolved, that enemy model cannot target that unit. In addition, until the end of the phase, if the selected unit has the bodyguard ability, it loses that ability. Yeah, it's fine. This is a 2 CP, don't shoot me thing. It comes up. It does. I like this kind of better than the +1 to save because this is just a flat out you can't shoot me. So it's not really I'm not trying to get more out of my terrible armor saves. It's just I'm trying to you just can't shoot me. So if you have something at the back, your backline objective holder that you don't want shot, like force your opponent to come to you. Next up, return to shadows, 1 CP. Use this stratagem in your movement phase when a Genestealer Cults infantry unit from your army is selected to move, or in your fight phase after a Genestealer Cults infantry unit from your army has resolved all of its attacks, but before it makes a consolidation move. If that unit is more than 6 inches away from any enemy units, remove it from the battlefield. In the reinforcement step of your next movement phase, set that unit back up on the battlefield anywhere that is more than 9 inches away from any enemy models. Especially now as the Arcs of Omen has gone on, and I know in my lists, I'm bringing fewer and fewer melee things, so being able to return them to shadows and then bring them back later, super handy. Keep in mind, though, that when you do bring them back, they are coming back as a normal deep strike, not underground. So they don't get the 8 or 6 inch, advantage. They can only come up 9 inches. Covering fire. Use the stratagem in your charge phase. Select one enemy unit that has a crossfire marker. Until the end of your turn, that unit cannot fire Overwatch, set to defend, or perform heroic interventions. 1 CP. To shut off heroic interventions, shut off Overwatch, which with the proliferation of flame weapons that are out there is handy. Yeah, it's awesome. Next up, tunnel crawlers. Use the stratagem in your charge phase. Select one area terrain feature, so say a ruin. Until the end of that turn, each time a Genestealer Cults infantry unit from your army declares a charge against an enemy unit within that area terrain feature. So, fractions of bases in that terrain feature. It doesn't matter how many units are in there. Your opponent, it could be Custodes, and they could have 16 models, and they could all be sitting in that ruin, and now suddenly all of them are affected by this. Each enemy units within that area terrain feature cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend, and that Genestealer Cults infantry unit ignores the effects of difficult ground trait from the area terrain feature. So yeah, another turn off Overwatch or set to defend. And then you can avoid any movement penalties. Yeah, covering fire, tunnel crawlers, clutch. Up next, we have Fanatical Devotion. This is long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. We're just going to summarize it here. It's if you have a Patriarch, a Primus, or a Magus, and they are within engagement range of an enemy unit, you can pay 1 CP and select a core unit within 6 inches of your Patriarch, Primus, or Magus. And that unit you selected, that core unit, can make a heroic intervention up to 6 inches. Now, it doesn't have to move towards the closest enemy unit, but it does have to end engagement range. It does have to end its heroic intervention within engagement range of the thing that's within engagement range of your Primus, Magus, or Patriarch. Roaming engagement is the next one. It's 2 CP. Use a stratagem in your shooting phase after making attacks with an Adeline or Achilles Ridge Runner unit from your army. That unit can make a normal move up to 7 inches as if it was your movement phase, but until the end of the turn, that unit is not eligible to declare a charge. Movement is king, and this is awesome. Plan on using this at least twice in a game. The coordinated assault. This is the last of our strategic ploy stratagems. It's 1 CP. Use this stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Select one enemy unit that has a crossfire marker and is within engagement range of any Genestealer Cults unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, that enemy unit is not eligible to fight until all eligible units from your army have done so. 1 CP, fight last. Absolutely budget for this. All right, we got 3 left to go. We just have our war gear stratagems. First up, Neural Overlord. Neural Overlord. I don't know why I'm having a hard time with that word today. This is going to be for a Sanctus. Use the stratagem in your shooting phase or in the fight phase after making an attack with your Sanctus model from your army. If an enemy model lost any wounds as a result of the attack but was not destroyed, roll 3d6. If the result is greater than the enemy model's leadership characteristics, until the start of your next shooting phase, the enemy model unit loses any aura abilities it has. If that enemy model is a Psyker, its unit also suffers perils of the warp. Situationally, it's cute, okay? It's a cute strat. Situationally, it can be fine if you find yourself against a low leadership army. Summon Familiar. This is 1 CP. Basically, you get to use your Familiar a second time. If the psychic phase is really important to you, you either want the Orb of the Unwilling or the Crouchling, and we discussed that in the Relics episode. Primed Explosive, the last one, 1 CP. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a Genestealer Cults model from your army shoots with a grenade weapon. Until the end of the phase, do not roll to determine the number of attacks made with that weapon. Instead, the maximum number of attacks are made. Yeah, definitely a build to play around that with your jackals, or anything really that's using demolition charges, but probably jackals. All right, that is going to wrap our discussion on the stratagems of the Genestealer Cults for Warhammer 40,000. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a like, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so that you get notified when we put out more stuff. Particularly going forward, like you'll get notified when we do those community posts. That's how I'm going to try and keep everybody informed on when stuff's going to get released, so you're not super like always wondering when there's going to be a video. As much as I like suspense, we'll try and make it a little bit easier for all of you that subscribe. And again, really appreciate that. Be sure to go over to Instagram, check out Astromax Media. That's probably where I'll be posting a lot of just like, hey, here's what I'm painting and working on today kind of thing. And until next time, remember, geek your own way.